You become a detective because you want to understand people. Not help them, not protect them, understand them. The way a watchmaker wants to understand a mechanism, not because he loves the watch, but because the inside of things fascinates him more than the outside ever could. You learn early that most people are readable. Their faces tell you everything before their mouths open. Fear looks a specific way. Guilt looks a different way. Grief is something else entirely. You catalog these expressions the way other kids collect baseball cards. By the time you're 12, you can tell when a teacher is lying. By 16, you can read a room in 30 seconds flat. By 22, you're at the police academy and your instructors call you a natural. They mean it as a compliment. You take it as an observation. The work suits you. Homicide, specifically. You request it and they give it to you after 3 years in patrol. Because your clearance rate is exceptional and your instincts are described in performance reviews as unusually precise. What they don't write in the reviews is what your partner, a 17-year veteran named Greer, says to you after your first month on the unit. He says, "Most detectives learn to think like killers. You already do." You smile and tell him it's a gift. He laughs. He thinks you're joking. The first time happens when you're 31. You don't plan it. That's what nobody understands about how these things begin. There's rarely a plan. There's a moment, a specific convergence of circumstance and impulse. And then there's a decision that takes less than 3 seconds and changes everything that comes after. The man's name is Aldrich Fossey. He's a mid-level fence who moves stolen goods through a pawn shop on the east side. You know him professionally. You've brought him in twice for questioning on separate cases. Both times he walked because his lawyer is better than the evidence. Both times he smiled at you on the way out the door. A specific kind of smile that says he knows exactly how the game works, and he's better at it than you are. The third time you encounter him, it's not professional. It's a parking garage at 11 p.m. He's leaving a poker game. You're heading to your car after a late interview across the street. He sees you and does the smile again. Says something that you won't repeat here because it doesn't matter what he said. What matters is what you feel when he says it. Not anger. Something colder than anger. Clarity. You drive home. You sit in your kitchen for 2 hours. You make coffee and don't drink it. Then you go back to the garage. He's still there. His car won't start. He's on the phone with a tow company, irritated, distracted. You won't describe what happens next. But afterward, you drive home, shower methodically, and sit back down at your kitchen table. The coffee is cold. You drink it anyway. You expect to feel horror. You expect your hands to shake the way they do in movies. Your hands are completely still. That's the first thing that tells you something is different about you. Not wrong, different. The word wrong implies a standard you've always applied to other people, but somehow never fully to yourself. The investigation lands on your desk 8 days later. Aldrich Fossey, found in a parking garage on the east side. Manner of death under investigation. You're assigned because you're the best closer in the unit, and the case looks like it might be complicated. Your lieutenant says it with complete confidence. No hesitation, no irony. You open the case file and read about yourself. The experience is difficult to describe. It's not panic. It's closer to the feeling of reading a novel where the narrator describes a room you've been in. The specific, verifiable accuracy of every detail. The odd sensation of recognition. You read the forensic notes carefully. You note what they found and what they didn't. You note the gaps in the evidence and understand, with professional precision, exactly why those gaps exist. You start the investigation. You are meticulous. You interview witnesses. You pull camera footage. You write detailed reports. You attend the briefings and offer analysis that your colleagues describe as insightful. At one point, your lieutenant tells the room that if anyone can close this, it's you. Nobody in that room understands the specific quality of the silence that follows. The problem isn't guilt. The problem is appetite. That's the part the psychology textbooks get closest to right, though they still miss it by a margin that would frustrate you if it mattered. It's not that guilt is absent. Guilt exists as a concept you understand intellectually, the same way you understand that some people are afraid of heights. You know the mechanism. You simply don't experience the sensation. What you experienced instead, approximately 6 weeks after Aldrich Fossey, is a restlessness that sits behind your sternum like a frequency you can't tune out. You go to the gym. You run. You take on extra cases. You stay late at the office reviewing cold files. None of it adjusts the frequency. It just fills the hours. The second time is 4 months later. Different city, different circumstances. You're there for a conference. A man at the hotel bar who makes a specific kind of mistake in how he talks to the bartender. The particular entitlement of someone who has never once considered that other people experience the world as fully as he does. You watch him for 3 hours. You think about it carefully. You make a decision with the same deliberateness you bring to a complex investigation. Afterward, you attend the morning conference sessions. You take notes. You network. You drive home on Sunday. The frequency quiets. You develop a system, not immediately. Systems take time and discipline, and you've always had both. But over the following year, you build something that functions with the same logical architecture you bring to your actual casework. Timing, geography, selection, methodology. You are, professionally speaking, one of the best analytical minds in your department. You apply that mind to both sides of the same problem. The detectives who catch killers understand that killers make mistakes because impulse overrides planning. You remove impulse from the equation entirely. Each decision passes through a filter. Risk, exposure, pattern, evidence. Nothing happens that doesn't survive that filter. You clear 4 homicide cases during the same period. 2 go to trial. Both result in convictions. Your lieutenant recommends you for a commendation. You attend the ceremony. You shake hands. You accept the plaque and say the right things. On the drive home, you think about the commendation and what it represents. The absolute, institutional confidence of the people who are supposed to catch you, expressed in the form of an award for your excellence at the job of catching people like you. The irony doesn't escape you. You just don't find it funny. Greer starts to notice something in year 2. Not about you specifically, about the cases. He has that quality some long-serving detectives develop, a kind of peripheral awareness that doesn't look like attention, but misses very little. He starts flagging similarities between incidents across jurisdictions, methodology, timing patterns, geographic spread. He brings it to you first, because you're his partner and because you're the best analyst in the unit. You sit with his notes for a long time. The work is genuinely impressive. He's found threads you didn't think anyone would find for years, if ever. He's mapped 4 incidents across 3 jurisdictions and drawn a behavioral profile that is, you have to acknowledge privately, accurate in its broad strokes. He doesn't have a suspect. He doesn't have anything close to physical evidence. But the architecture of his thinking is sound. You tell him it's compelling. You tell him to write it up and you'll review it together. You suggest 2 additional data points he should pull that will, you know with certainty, produce nothing useful because you've already accounted for them. You go home that night and sit in your kitchen for a long time. The frequency is completely silent. That surprises you. You expected it to increase. Instead, there's something that functions almost like calm, the particular stillness of a problem that has clarified itself. You're not afraid of Greer. You're not afraid of being caught. What you feel is something closer to respect, for the first time in recent memory, for another person's mind. That's new. You make one mistake. One. In 2 years of absolute methodological discipline, you make a single error so small that almost any other investigator would never find it. Greer finds it. It's a timeline discrepancy. A conference check-in record from 18 months ago that places you 60 miles from where you claim to be during a window that matters. He doesn't come to you with it. He goes to the lieutenant first, quietly, the way a careful person handles a careful thing. You find out because the lieutenant calls you into his office and closes the door and looks at you with an expression that you've seen before on other people's faces in other rooms. The expression of someone sitting across from a problem they don't fully understand yet, but whose shape they've begun to recognize. He asks about the timeline. You answer calmly. You have an explanation prepared, not manufactured in that moment, prepared months ago as contingency, because you always prepare contingencies. The explanation is plausible. It doesn't resolve the discrepancy, but it complicates it enough to create reasonable doubt in a conversation that isn't yet formal. He nods. He says he's sure it's nothing. He says he just needed to ask. You tell him you understand completely. That evening, you drive to a spot outside the city, a reservoir where you go sometimes to think. You sit on the hood of your car and watch the water. You think about Greer, about the quality of his mind, about the fact that he found something you didn't expect him to find. Using logic you taught him in your first year as partners. You think about what comes next, the formal interview, the deeper review, the eventual evidence that will accumulate once someone is looking in the right direction. You think about the commendation plaque on your office wall, about the cases you closed, the convictions you secured, the actual work you did with full competence and genuine commitment. You think about how both things are true simultaneously and what that means about the categories people use to organize the world into sense. The water doesn't give you an answer. Water never does. But the act of sitting still with a problem, you can't solve the way you've solved every previous problem. That's new too. You drive back to the city. You go to the office early the next morning. Greer is already there, which doesn't surprise you. He looks up when you walk in. Neither of you says anything for a moment. The silence has a specific texture, the kind that exists between two people who are both aware that a conversation is coming that will change everything and are both, for different reasons, not ready to start it yet. You set your coffee on your desk. You open the FOSS file. You start working. Because that's what you do. You work until you can't anymore. The interview happens on a Thursday. Internal affairs, 2 investigators you don't know, a room you've put other people in before. You know the architecture of this room from the other side. The placement of the chairs, the angle of the camera, the way the silence is used as a tool rather than a gap. You sit down, you fold your hands on the table. They ask their questions. You answer. Not everything. Not honestly. But carefully, the way you've always done everything. with enough truth inside the structure to make the structure hold. At the end of the session, the lead investigator slides a folder across the table. Inside is Greer's timeline analysis. All of it now, not just the 4 incidents. 7, spanning 26 months, across 4 jurisdictions. He kept working after the conversation with the lieutenant. Of course he did. That's what Greer does. You look at the document for a long time. It's the best investigative work you've ever seen. You tell them that, sincerely. They don't know what to do with that, which is, in its own way, the last professional satisfaction available to you in this room. Here's what nobody tells you about being exactly this kind of person. It's not dramatic. There's no internal monster. There's no darkness you fight against every day. No war between what you are and what you want to be. There's just a gap between how you experience the world and how the world expects you to experience it. You learn to navigate that gap the way people learn to navigate any chronic condition. You built systems. You maintained appearances. You did genuinely good work on one side of the ledger while doing something else entirely on the other. And for a long time, the gap held. Greer closed it. With patience and logic and the specific stubbornness of someone who believes that the truth of a thing can be found if you're willing to keep looking. You trained him. You made him better at the job. And the job, in the end, was finding you. There's something almost orderly about that. Almost. The room is quiet. The camera light blinks red in the corner. You fold your hands on the table and wait for what comes next. This is fiction. If this one made you think, subscribe. New story next week.